The Plebeian View's goal is to be a leading voice on creating a fair and equitable world where all people are entitled to life, liberty, and happiness.
All right, today the Plebeian View for February, which is Black History Month, but to me Black History Month is American history every month of the year. And today I'm honored to be here live with Mr. Charles Trott here in Asbury, which is, he calls himself a historian of diasporic African history.
An African diasporic consultant. That is what I am.
African diasporic consultant.
Right.
And this brother has, I met him when I first came here in Asbury a number of years back, and his jest of history really amazed me. And I decided for Black History Month, I wanted to have him on. Once again, I'm Muata Greene of the Plebeian View, and I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. And as we say up here, we're veterans, we hate war, we're against war. And we'll quote General Eisenhower, a great general from World War II, says, "As a soldier who has lived it, can only one who has seen its brutality, its futility, and its stupidity." And this was from World War II. And now we are, next 21st century, and we're still doing the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk more of that as that goes on. So let's start out by talking about, I'm going to talk about, in the Tri-City News this month, I did an article about Black History Month called The Dialectics of Black History. And to me, the dialectics encompasses everything. And being I have Charles here, I want to know your take on your article and also how you look at history at this time in the world that's going on. How does history affect us?
Well, I read a number of your articles, and I generally always agree with the vast majority of things you say, but now history is more important than ever, and that is world history, which includes, of course, Black history, but we shouldn't get so segmented and tribal as to think only of Black history or only of Latino or only of women's or only of Asian and Pacific Islanders or only of Indigenous Americans or only of Latinos. We have to think in terms of human history. No one's seemingly teaching much about this these days, and if they are, it's soon to be cut, according to the administration we see. So, like anything else, what do they say? If Muhammad won't go to the mountain. No, if the mountain won't come to Muhammad,
Muhammad's got to go to the mountain.
So, if they won't teach us, we got to teach ourselves.
True.
And many of you think, or many of us think, that teachers have to be trained, and of course we are in the college system, trained as teachers, but if you learn something, if you're capable of explaining what you learned, you're a teacher too.
Good point. Good point.
I think it's very important.
So that's your take on how important history is at this time in the stage where we are, what's going on, and stuff like that.
And I'm not negating Black history because, hey.
Yeah, you're a Black person.
Actually, Black history or African American history was the first cultural history month devised here in these United States of America. The others came afterward. And not to say that they're second rate, but to show if there weren't a Carter G. Woodson, there might not be the other cultural history months.
Good point. Good point. And what do you think of the take of how I dealt with the dialectics of Black history? Did you have anything specific to say about that?
I can't remember. You laid it out numerically. No, I don't remember it all. I'd have to look at it and pinpoint. But like I said, after I read the whole article, I said, well, Muata's he's hit pretty much everything.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to say dialectic, like for instance, the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement. Dialectic really, even though she's looking for to achieve the similar things, but in some ways, they were dialectically opposed, but they really wasn't. Just different ways to go towards the goal.
Right. We still have suffragettes. Which happened back in what, the 1870s or 1860s?
Before women had the right to vote.
Then again in the 1920s, then again in the women's history in the 1970s. 1970 was 50-something years ago. reminding me of things tend to happen in 50, 60-year cycles.
Good point.
60 years ago, we were in the midst every summer in a black community somewhere in the United States. It would erupt for the same old reasons: police brutality, lack of jobs, and whatever else. That was 60 years ago. It's still happening today.
Oh, yes.
Not quite on that, and I'm certainly not talking it up and wanting to see it again. But those race riots are right under the surface.
Yes.
And the attitudes that created them are still here and prevalent today.
True.
All right? And you go back 60 years prior to 1960, you're in the 1900s. What was that? You had the Bloody Sunday, you had, back around 1920, you had Black Wall Street being burned to the ground, and a number of other Black Wall Streets. That 1920s period was the nadir of social, I forget what the right word would be, but it was one of the worst periods, other than being in slavery, for black people in America back in the 1920s.
That's true. And I, second that. And like I said, me, part of a veteran, who was part of, like I said, Veterans for Peace, I look at, like I said, things in increments of history. And like we go how history is, like, 50, 60-year periods. And I look at the history, what's going on now in America, took place, started 50, 60 years ago when Reagan was president. Government was the enemy, downsize the government, change the government. And if we don't change the problem, it shows itself, it just tends to get worse and worse. And I think now we're experiencing here in the United States, the worse of it can become. And if we don't correct the system, it can be worse, and people don't understand that. And also, me as a person that's in the military and was drafted into the military, so-called during the Vietnam War, which was a police action anyway. To me, the last great war was like Eisenhower's war was against fascism, like that. And we have to look at historically and understand how we got to this point. And that's why we here, Veterans for Peace and organizations, we're about peace. We're not pacifists, we're about peace. Like we say, if you want to thank me for my service, work for peace. Because they're always saying, thank you for your service. No, I was listening to something the other day, a good point. They say, no human being wants to kill another human being. And what they do, they send working class people from each country to fight another working class person from another country. The rich leadership doesn't get out there and fight. But we fight each other for the crumbs that they're going to give us afterwards. And see, that's what we have to learn from. And that's important to me as a veteran. And people try to call me anti-patriotic. No, you're not anti-patriotic when you criticize something that's being abused. It's like if you're abused by your spouse, you're not supposed to praise your spouse. You're supposed to push back. So if America is my country, I was born here, so I have a right to criticize it. And before I end, I just want to read briefly what we, people who haven't heard for Veterans for Peace, what we really stand for. Veterans for Peace. We're a global organization of military veterans, allies, who collectively efforts are to build a culture of peace by using our experiences and lifting our voices. We inform the public of true causes of war, the enormous cost of war, with an obligation to heal the wounds of war. Our network is composed of over 140 chapters worldwide, includes educating the public, advocating for dismantling the war economy, providing services that assist veterans and victims of war, and most significantly work to end all wars. And that's what we're about, Veterans for Peace. And you can go online, veteransforpeace.org, and we're up there. And more information, you can get us and check us out. And I just want people to know that every month, the Plebeian View podcast is up. And this month, like I say, it's a little later in the month. We're going into Women's History Month. Remember, Black or American history, whatever you want to call it, it's American history. Couldn't exist unless it works, that history is collectively. It affects everybody. And as we, say in the native tongue of Kiswahili, tuta nana, until we meet again. Thank you, everybody. Please send an email to plebeianview@gmail, and look forward to hearing your feedback. And I'll see you next month. Take care.
There is war. It's a war.
The Plebeian View's goal is to be a leading voice on creating a fair and equitable world where all people are entitled to life, liberty, and happiness.
It's a war.
The Plebeian View's goal is to be a leading voice on creating a fair and equitable world where all people are entitled to life, liberty, and happiness.